curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Hello everyone. Today we got Vic Redbard, Cam Fraser and Shaney Marie, and we're going to talk all things sexuality and anything in that area as well. So talking cocks, pussies, working in this industry, being leaders in this industry, being students, what it's like to facilitate these experiences and all the different ways we can show up as sexuality leaders. I think I want to start off with you, Vic, because I probably was introduced to you first. So I wanted to first of all ask what it is in the field you're currently doing, what it is that you show up as a sexuality leader right now.
I'm liking that term sexuality leader more and more for this kind of field that we're in, because I feel that all of us do such different work, and what I'm really getting into at the moment is like what is sexuality development, and how does that come together as a field, and how can all the work that we do, including the things that are more spiritual and more or more science-based, come together to exist in one space so that it can become more of like a household name. I guess there's like a movement piece there for me, and like an impact piece on like how do we all come together, and then on a more like what am I actually doing. I created a sexuality school last year called the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy, where I'm helping people step into their sexuality leader and their transmission of what sexuality looks like in their body, so that they can share that, so that we can see more of this work in the world, because I just feel like it's very underground still. And I have a really strong desire to see that that change in the next few years.
Can I actually do some bragging rights? Did I give you that name?
You named it.
I named it. Yeah, everyone. Do I get like 5% of all the proceeds
You
or
definitely
something?
should have done that.
Damn it. All right. Thanks, Vic. Cam, do you want to let us know what you're doing as a sexuality leader? And also for everyone I'm asking this, do you consider yourself a sexuality leader?
I never really thought about it. I do, like, a component of my work is sexual leadership, but I guess I consider myself more knowledgeable than the average person. So whether that makes me a leader or not, I'm not 100% sure. I think that's something I probably need to feel into a bit more.
And if it's sexuality leadership, then I guess someone's got to be leading it, right?
Yeah, that's it. So I like the term, and I think I'll use it a bit more. But the work that I'm doing at the moment is specifically with men. So I'm a men's sex coach. That's kind of my professional title, and it's it comes from a personal space, I suppose. I try and speak to myself 10 years ago when I was like I was using a lot of drugs, and I was drinking a lot, and my whole sexual health and mental health space was pretty poor. So like my work is, I guess, geared towards the stuff that I needed to hear 10 years ago when I was a younger man. And because I kind of felt like, and I still kind of feel this, that it's pretty universal what a lot of kind of young men go through, regardless of their country of origin or circumstances. They all go through pretty similar stuff. So I think my work has like really resonated with guys, because we all share a pretty similar lived experience, especially like cisgender, heterosexual, white guys, which is my demographic. And so the work that I'm doing is niched towards kind of people that share my lived experience, because that's what I can kind of speak on with authority. And it's really about rewriting narratives around masculinity and sexuality and the intersection between those two things. So it's a bit of a twisting, winding journey to kind of get to that point, but that's where I've landed, and that's where I'm happy.
Awesome. Thank you, Cam. And Shaney, are you a sexuality leader? What does that mean to you?
Well, apparently.
You are now self-anointed by me. Yeah. I'm the crowner of that distribution.
Well, I think that the audience that I've that sees me tends to see me more of a sexuality leader than I like to see myself as, because I don't know, like being a sexuality leader is a lot of responsibility, actually. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a bit of a denial about that responsibility because I'm creative, so I want to be more like artistic, and I'm sure we'll be talking all about that, like the traumas and things. But yeah, so yes, I am, and I work with mostly women now. So I've worked with different people. Like I started out as a stripper, and it was really like stripper counseling, because I was one of those strippers that got the like long clientele, like the 5-hour clients. So it was like I was counseling, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should just like do this as a job, you know? And then did the Tantra stuff, working with men and creating different programs and all of that. So now it's just working with women around the feminine. That's what really inspires me. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Thank you. So there's a bit of history in that one as well. So two things that I, and just because I recently spoke about this with Vic, Cam, you say you mostly work with men, especially the demographic of straight, cis men, because that's what you identify as. So that's what's best spoken to. And Shaney, you're saying you're mostly working with women now. I'm curious to hear in your containers, and you too, Vic, we've previously spoke about this, is people coming in that are either like trans, that have transitioned to the sexuality that you work with, the gender that you work with, or are there any non-binary people that have the sexual organs that you are currently working with, whoever wants to sort of take this?
Yeah, I'll share straight away and say that I refer people out. It's not my area of expertise, and it's not something that I have a lot of knowledge about. It's probably a bit more knowledge than the average person, like I was sharing before. But it's something that I don't feel is I would do service or do justice to someone who identified that way. So I have a pretty strong referral basis that I send people out to.
Do you have any people you want to shout out for anyone that's listening now that might feel like they're like, oh shit, this isn't the podcast for me then?
Sure. There's a lovely woman, I think over East, called Tamika Wilder, who I would highly recommend. She's doing some amazing work, especially with BIPOC as well. And the other person I refer out, the name escapes me at the moment, but I can always drop a list into the show notes if you need to.
Thank you. And how about yourself, Shaney? Oh, sorry. The two people going at once.
So, in my earlier days, I did a fair bit of training with queer community, but it just seems that I don't attract that audience, and I have just surrendered and trust that. Although it does like grind me sometimes when I'm like, wow, like, so much of the audience is white, cisgendered folk, right? So it's definitely something that's present for me, and it's something that I would love to expand on. I just don't know if that's something that my trainees perhaps more move into. Maybe that's just I'm just attractive so much. Maybe it's what I speak to. I don't know. But certainly, like Barbara Corrales was a big inspiration for me a long time ago, and her spaces are so diverse, and there's so many different types of folk in there, and it's beautiful. It's such a celebratory space. But yeah.
I was fascinated with the both of you, like hearing that you're like, Cam, you're more like, I don't fully know, but I've both of you, for instance, some of the stuff that I share as I go down that path, I've seen you both comment some things. I'm like, oh, cool. Like around intersex, around non-binary, around even just like the terminology of man, like being like, oh, cool. This bits of information around these sexuality leaders that I know are actually, though it might seem that the audience is this one particular flavor, doesn't mean that's all that you're thinking about and equip yourself with. And
I just find I get quite like fired up politically when it comes to these things, because there's so much misinformation out there around what intersex is, or what non-binary folk are, and you know, these like very black and white judgments, and it doesn't speak to the nuances and the subtleties of the human spirit and the human biology. And you know, that frustrates me sometimes.
Yeah.
Like correct that, like, yeah.
I'm curious, just in saying that, where have you learnt all of this for all of you? Like, where are you learning about these different things with, for instance, with non-binary and intersex gendered people?
I mean, for me, it's more online, like articles, following different people, trying as much as possible to read different threads and get information. And then, like I said, in the earlier days of being a part of, you know, that kind of workshop scene.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The base of my knowledge would have come from my academic studies, which was a postgrad degree in sexology. And then anything on top of that is just from kind of workshops, going to talks given by variously identifying people, and then just my own personal conversations, such as, you know, having a chat with someone like Toby Whittington, who's intersex, on my podcast, things like that. So yeah, it's just building on whatever I learned at school.
Yeah, I want to check out that podcast. I was scrolling through your page the other day and I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be a brilliant conversation. I could go check that out. And yourself, Vic?
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold for me. Like, I have people who are queer and gay and don't identify necessarily as any particular gender in the course. And I, speak a lot to these pieces through my own experience of witnessing people in their self-pleasure. And I've had, the opportunity to witness, you know, different genders and different people that experience sexuality in different ways in their self-pleasure. And that's the piece that's underneath the Institute of New Paradigm Intimacy, is this modality of self-pleasure in this way that I've been witnessing it emerge over the years.
Wonderful. So with, like, for instance, something Shaney said there is you are training people up. Can you speak to that, as in you have trainees? What does that mean? Well,
as in like the women who are professionals in the field, like currently that's my demographic. But maybe as I move forward in the future, as I step more into training more and more people, that maybe they will be the voices for certain, you know, because I'm a true believer in the transmission and everyone owning their unique transmission. I'm also really passionate about, you know, like so many people want to build like these big kind of like empires or big movements, and I really feel that the change is going to happen through the community transmissions, like the leaders like working directly and intimately with their people. I feel really like my heart feels passionate about that, about being engaged and intimate with the people that we're sharing our work with, rather than this kind of old paradigm, it almost feels for me, of being like a godhead amongst a big industry, which I think can really remove you from the audience. So that's what I'm reflecting on at the moment. I necessarily have like a solid answer for that, but
yeah, cool. And that's a big like intention of mine with this podcast, is to be able to be like, all right, yeah, we're all off doing our thing, you know, and we get focused on that and with our clients. But when certain people become leaders, you know, at certain parts, you know, like for instance, I spent a bit of time with Vic in my life. The other two of you, I've briefly met you, Shaney, and I've never met you in person, Cam, but you know, there's for me a respect towards all of you, but it's not like I get to learn from you and have conversations with you at all times, and I don't see that among everyone. So this is an intention of like, cool, how do we share that information between one another and take that back into our own community, into our own clients, and also broaden it by cross-pollinating with one another. And like, I guess with yourself, Vic, you have as a school, I'm curious to see how that happens. What's the lessons you're getting from training up students and the different people that are coming in, and what that does for you, what new transmissions you're getting from having students?
Pretty fast. It's pretty wild. I get a lot, and I feel, I agree and disagree with what you shared, Shaney. Like, I feel similar and also differ a little bit there. Like this morning, before this, I jumped on a call with the men from the Institute, and I've been doing that throughout the course, and speaking like directly to getting feedback of like, what is going on for you guys? What's actually happening with your sexuality? Where do you feel supported? And especially as a gay man, where do you feel supported and where do you not feel supported in my course? I guess continually asking the questions and just continually getting all the feedback in that way. Mm-hmm. And I love what you shared about the experience of the intimacy with the people that we do this work with. And, you know, I'm really passionate about the work of transmission as well, of like what happens when people are actually able to receive from us in a way that is beyond words and beyond just cognitive understanding of what this work is. And I believe that most of our work really stems beyond the mind and in the body. And then I also feel that, you know, what I would love to see in the future is more of that. And, you know, just look at where people all fit into this piece. And that's why I speak to them a lot towards sexuality leaders. And when I first got this course out, it was really about sex coaches. And then I recognize there's like so much more to our industry than just like people coaching. And almost like because of this concept of transmission, I almost feel like sometimes we're not coaching, you know, it's actually it's more like mentoring or just like being this guide. And, you know, this piece of how do we offer this transmission? How do we allow people to find their own experience of their sexuality by just being around us? So I'm always like in the inquiry of how I can share more of my knowledge and more of my transmission without people thinking that they need to be like my sexuality. So it's something that I'm always, you know, in that conversation with my own students of like, how do we create that so that that's possible for them?
Yeah, that's a fascinating one, saying that not being like your sexuality, you know, because this is something I'm going through because I'm more and more trying to just step into fluidity with myself. Like I consider myself sexually fluid, gender fluid, and what that means for my audience, because I've previously really appealed to men that just want to get with women, because I was at points where I had all these like beautiful photos of women and etc. But now it's like, oh, by the way, I'm like hooking up with dudes over here, and sometimes I consider myself woman or non-binary, and finding that ability to connect with people still, regardless of how I sexually identify or what my gender identifies with. Yet in that, like, and which means at the same time, I've been getting a whole lot more queer folk in my containers. But so far with my experience, I've come across that it's, like Vic was saying, it's more than just coaching and giving this like intellect. It's there's embodiment within sexuality in this work that, to me, so far, it's still the hardest with men, to get them into their bodies and to get that trust piece. And I want to start off with Cam, because I feel like, first of all, it might be harder as a man to get another man in a body versus a woman to get a man in his body. But I want to know what your experience is with getting these guys that you are coaching into their bodies. Cam?
If I think of it like real clinically and practically, it's like a 3-part process. And the first part of that process is the intellect, right? Is I'll usually talk to guys about, and usually it's like data driven as well. I'll present like a bunch of information to them. I'll introduce a couple of concepts, just kind of nudge that door open a little bit with regards to the way that they conceive their own masculinity or the way that they conceive their own sexuality. So I approach it from like the scientific, fact-driven kind of point of view, and just kind of drop some knowledge on them, and that'll kind of, a light bulb moment will go off for them, and that is generally then the launch pad for them to be introduced to some sort of physical activity. And before it's even overtly sexual, I'll usually introduce them to some sort of stretching or some sort of movement practice that doesn't really, in their mind, have anything to do with sexuality, but I know that it's working towards getting them to a point where they feel more comfortable introducing more of a sexual element into it. And then, we'll transition into that kind of third phase, which is, I guess, like subdivided, which is like, what are they doing now with regards to their masturbation habits? What are they doing now with regards to like how they touch themselves, how they treat their body? And we'll kind of like start there, and then I'll build them up to whatever self-pleasuring kind of looks like for them, and wherever they feel comfortable going. And so oftentimes that looks like guys doing some sort of prostate play or anal play, for example, or just learning how to experience pleasure in other areas of their body. But before we jump to like there, I've got to get them down here first, and then just kind of slowly build them up rather than kind of diving straight into it.
It's fascinating. Like, it's cool that you actually have steps, which, does speak to me in a way of like how I believe a lot of men work, is just like, you need this certain, like, this is how we're going to get you into your body, rather than it being a bit more like the feminine, like, let's just feel in and get you in there. Shaney, with your experience of going from working with men to women, did you see like a dramatic change in the ability to get them into their body?
Well, because my work's always about the transmission of the feminine, so even my work with men was still about the transmission of the feminine. I wasn't, I was approaching it in that way. So, in Awakening Connections, we used to teach this concept of how the man's heart is like the woman's yoni, and really creating safety for the man's heart yoni, and really like tending to that place and creating a container of safety so that they felt that they could open their heart yoni, or that it could bloom within the space. And so I always just really held that piece with presence. And even before I even knew that concept, I realized it was something that I was just doing. So men would really just naturally open in these spaces. And because I think that sex is a real gateway as well. So when you're working with, the tantric massage stuff and teaching them about sexuality, it's like that opens a portal for them to feel permission, because they're familiar generally with that space. And also, the tantrics talk about, the neo-tantrics talk about the positive pole of the sex of the male, and that the heart yoni for the male is the negative pole, right? So when you're working with the positive pole, that's what tends to open the rest of the body first. So that was kind of how I would move in.
Do you give this concept to, or did you give this concept to the men that you're working with, like saying like, oh, we're going to open up your heart yoni? Because I imagine for a lot of people, it'd be like, what is a yoni, and why do I have one in my heart?
Not so much. I do now, like when I speak to guys, because it's just, but in the field of like working one-on-one, it was more the energy that I was holding and being aware of that, and really like feeling like the opening and the closing, and feeling how safe they were in the space, and just really engaging with that, step by step. But what I did working with men, what was illuminated was the fact that often they didn't know their boundaries, or they didn't know that they even had any, or they would just kind of surrender to this experience of being like showered by the goddess. And then it was through the subtlety, the subtle working, you would start to fine tune and be like, actually, maybe this was an edge, but there was just a kind of opening without really knowing of those edges for them, I guess. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is like to get these men to open up for you, there's an element of like tenderness, seduction, and erotic energy. Would that be right?
Yeah, and you know, it wasn't them opening for me. It was
Yeah.
them opening into themselves for themselves. And
Yeah.
I was just creating the vessel and space for them to do that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And Vic, as someone that working with both, or like women, men, and the rest of the spectrum of gender, I'm curious to hear just what your relationship with men is and getting them into their body in comparison to women.
Yeah, I loved a piece that you commented about, Cam, about the linear journey. It's like a big chat that I was having with the men in my container this morning. And what I've been finding is that they're very receptive to the, obviously being female and in this body experience, it does come across quite feminine sometimes, my transmission. And this is the expression of my work in general can be, very much activations, and this is what wants to come through, and this is what's still alive. And what I've been finding is that and I asked them about that this morning, how that was for them if they needed the linear journey. And they said that because I've been able to frame it and bring context to what's coming through, that it's been easy for them to receive. And it almost sounds similar to what Shaney's sharing with, like, if we prepare them and prepare the space for them to step into it, it's like easier for them to receive in a certain way. So yeah, I think that's been my experience. And then again, just a lot of having them interact with each other and breaking down those barriers of conditioning has created a really powerful space for them to step into their body. So I've been really enjoying watching that emerge in the container.
Wonderful. So something all three of you had said throughout that, which I'd like to talk about, especially I find so important in sexuality, is, and this is just open to whoever, is feminine and masculine gendered?
Who wants it?
I'll jump in there. Like my first off the top of my head answer is no, and that. But then I think that's a conversation that's been had by everyone in the sexuality space, which is like, and I hear it just rattled off like it's meaningless now, which is like, I'm saying masculine and feminine, but it doesn't mean man and women, and it's like, that's all well and good, and you can say that till the cows come home. But I think what's more interesting maybe I want to open this conversation up is do we have to use the terms masculine and feminine? Like, do we still have to keep on using that terminology? And to speak back into that podcast with Toby that I was speaking to a little while ago, Toby introduced this idea of like, what about human or humanin? What about that kind of middle ground between masculine and feminine, where we don't really need to use labels to determine a specific energy or a specific set of characteristics or a specific way of kind of showing up in the world. I think that's a more interesting conversation, is getting rid of, we're getting rid of kind of the terms man and women, and we're using masculine and feminine, but can we get rid of masculine and feminine and use something that's a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just a bit more nuanced, I suppose. I think, we're still dichotomizing things into masc and fem, and I think that's, I don't know, still creating divide, in my opinion anyway.
Who wants to go off the back of that?
For me, I love it. Straight up, I love the framework of the masculine and feminine. It has given me personally just so much. But there was also, on my journey, a lot of confusion of trying to work it out. And so I say that from my position of privilege, of having got to a point where I experience it in such an integrated space. So, I understand the confusion around it, but essentially the way I look at it is, there's masculine men and there's masculine women, essenced. It's like a percentage thing. I think David talks about this. It's like the percentage of like, I might feel like 60% feminine and the rest is masculine, and everyone's got like different, and it may change and undulate and move through your life. And it's just an energy and a consciousness that's there. And yeah, personally, I receive so much from it. I'm very open to that shifting on my journey of awakening and it dissolving completely. I'm ready for that, but it hasn't yet. So yeah.
I feel like my understanding is like it's almost journeying towards a dissolving, you know, and perhaps that's why we are seeing more, you know, more of the genders moving and stuff like that in our lifetime, because they're like, for me, masculine and feminine, we can say yin and yang, I don't know, like it's like left and right, whatever we want to say, it's like it's just a polarity that's playing out. And we speak of it being masculine and feminine, and what my understanding is that although I have both the masculine and feminine side of me due to the conditioning and you know, the societal ideas of how things are, often my feminine being in a woman's body will be more cultivated. And in a man, often you see the male masculine is more cultivated just because of what is put on us due to the way we look and what we're born into. And so I feel like, you know, there's still a space for the masculine and feminine words to be used for us to actually get an understanding of that piece. And when we understand that, that's when there's almost like more range and more choice and more ability to step towards the, you know, the non-duality of that, you know, like beyond those polarities, like what's there and what's available to us. And I think that's a really important part of the sexuality development journey that we often go through.
Yeah, it's something I'm journeying and still trying to figure out where I sit with it. Like times I'm like, yes, like I'm like, Shaney, I'm like, I love it. Like I just live for it. It's so easy for me to understand. And other times I'm like, oh, this is problematic because it's too embedded with dogma and it's just too hard to get out of it. And it's hurtful for others. Like I wouldn't have been able to like drop into that feminine and part of myself into that other side of myself that I didn't know was available if it wasn't labeled feminine and there wasn't certain traits that sat within it, you know, like especially going to dancing eros, it was like, oh my God, there's so much permission to embody these different erotic archetypes that we've labeled feminine. So I was able to just drop out of, like I was on my journey, but it gave me a big chunk of like, okay, I don't have to be this role. But then, you know, like all love to dancing eros, but like a big part of it that I didn't enjoy for me was like we had to discover our own female name, like who is the woman within you? And I'm like, Paisley, like just me, you know. And at that point I didn't know anything about I was not really knowing much about non-binary, transgender, gender fluidity, any of this, but it just felt a bit off for me, but I rocked with it because I was like, whatever, okay, woman, who cares. So I wouldn't have had that access point in, but then like for instance, I was at a mystery school recently and they're doing all this masculine, feminine stuff. And the way that they were explaining masculine and feminine were very like he, she, even though, and this is the thing I see with the spiritual community and sexuality teachers is I feel like everyone's like, yeah, no, it's not gendered, but it's just so easy to say she, the feminine, and he, the masculine. It's just so easy to do that. And that's where I get a bit stuck around it. And then even I recently in one of my containers was like, all right, I'm going to do this masculine feminine transmission. And I don't believe it's gendered. It's just this. And I give a bit of examples what it is. And I have like a few non-binary people in there and they hated it and hated on me for it. And I was like, fuck, like I don't know how to give this transmission that has helped me so much and I believe is so helpful without being stuck in this gender thing. So just figuring that out is something that I'm very curious about. Like, can we, evolve past it? But again, just seeing how helpful it is. I don't really have an answer on that. It's just more like getting where people are at currently. So yeah, it's cool to see that everyone has a varying terminology and idea on where it's at. Another one I want to ask is which majority of sexuality teachers have so many varying opinions on is pornography. What's everyone's relationship as a coach, as a leader with pornography for themselves and for their students who they're teaching? I feel like Cam, this should be yours because your program is actually called Outperforming a Porn Star. It feels like a good start.
Yeah, I'll jump straight in. I've got a lot to say on this, but I'll try and keep it concise. So the way that I frame, because there's two conversations here, I feel. There's like healthily using porn, and then also healthy porn, right? There's like the whole conversation around, okay, the production of pornography, is it ethical? Are people getting paid? What's the narratives behind it? Whose direct intention behind it? Is it educational? Is it feminist? What, you know, the whole production side of things. And then there's the, how is it being consumed? Is it being consumed, you know, healthily? Is it being consumed ethically? Is it being consumed mindlessly? And how's it being watched, I suppose? So I want to shelve the ethical pornography conversation just for the time being, but we can definitely get into that because I think it's a really important conversation to have. But watching porn, in my humble opinion, is not inherently bad or not inherently wrong or not inherently detrimental. I usually, when I'm talking to guys about porn viewing habits, say to them that porn is a tool, and just like any tool, you want to use the tool. You don't want the tool to use you. You don't want to become reliant on that tool. Because I find a lot of guys outsource their pleasure, outsource their arousal, outsource their turn on to whatever they're watching on screen. They find it quite difficult to feel aroused and feel pleasurable and to get into that sexual energy without the help of that tool. So for me, that's then them becoming reliant and having to use that pornography as in an unhealthy way. So if you're, and oftentimes I equate this, and maybe I can get some feedback from Shaney and Vic here, but I often equate it to a vibrator being a tool as well. And getting to the point where you become reliant on the vibrator, if you've got a clitoris or if you're just using a vibrator in general, if you can't achieve arousal, can't achieve stepping into your own sexual energy, can't achieve a lot of pleasure without the use of a vibrator or the use of a tool, then you're becoming reliant on that. So I kind of frame it the same way for guys when it comes to pornography. If it's something that you need and that you can't get aroused without, then it's probably become a bit of a problem and a bit of an issue. So that's the framework that I give to guys, and then it's like, okay, well, how are you using that tool? Are you using it consciously? Are you aware of like how it's affecting your body? Are you aware of the narratives that you're consuming? Are you aware of like, are you just kind of stagnant and stationary when you're watching porn? Are you standing up? Are you, Joseph Kramer likes to talk about porn yoga or erotic embodiment. Are you able to really step into your pleasure even while you're using the screen? Are you able to listen to porn? Are you able to read porn? How are you using this tool? How are you consuming this product, I suppose?
Oh.
So I think there's, so I think there's nothing wrong with watching porn. I will say, and here's where the two conversations overlap, is it's important to be mindful of the porn that you're consuming. I steer clear. I tell guys to steer clear of tube sites or to steer clear of a lot of mainstream pornography, and I'll direct them towards alternative, ethical, educational porn, more artistic porn, something that you and I have talked about before. And that's where I feel like those two conversations overlap, is okay, how are you using the porn, and then what porn are you actually using as well?
Fascinating. Cool.
I really love those distinctions about the healthy piece, and I think that's really powerful how you've worded that, so I appreciate that. Self-pleasure is one of the pieces that I've really looked at this with, and a lot of men that come to my work come with premature ejaculation and want to work through self-pleasure for premature ejaculation. And what I have been discovering through that is that there's a way of consuming pornography where you're able to be in the body and you're able to experience it. And it's almost like this thing around transmission that we're speaking of. It's like you're able to feel and the sensations that are coming through your body as you're witnessing what's happening on the screen. And then there's almost another way of just blindly consuming it, and you're just almost letting it go into your brain. You're not really feeling what's going on in the body. And it's like the habitual kind of jacking off experience. And you know, we're predominantly speaking about men here watching pornography, but this is very similar for women as well. You know, it's like when we're not in the body and we're watching pornography and we're just being stimulated through the mind, it's the same piece. It's like habitual touching of the clitoris without any conscious awareness of what's happening in your body as you're doing it. And I found the major piece that has helped men transition through premature ejaculation into ejaculation mastery, and women becoming more in touch with their feminine and through what they're experiencing, is the piece of noticing where their awareness is inside of themselves when they're watching the porn. So if they can feel their sensations and they can connect to their body and they're in their body while they're watching it, it feels like it's actually quite a powerful tool. Whereas when they're just blindly in the habit of doing it and they're not really aware, and it kind of just comes to an end, and it's quite, we don't really know how we got there. Like, that's the experience that I've seen where it can be damaging.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with both of you. And for me, like, I've never really gotten into porn because every time, apart from I went through a phase of watching gay porn, like male gay porn, like, it was like the only time I really loved it. But the rest of the time, if I've tried, it's just taken me into my head. I just go into this like voyeuristic mode, and I can't feel my sensation, I can't feel my emotion, I can't feel anything really. It's just like I just go into the space. It disconnects me from my experience. But I think that porn in general holds space for the collective shadows, sexual shadows, and we get to see what's playing out through what is presented to us and what the audience is wanting. And I think that that's very important, not to stifle that by shaming it so much, but providing better education, so that these people feel like they have spaces like Vic spaces, and the spaces that we create where they can come and they can reveal these kinks and these fetishes that they have, and bring them into a place of harmony and love, because a lot of these things are playing out because there's so much shame being presented there. So I think it's not about stifling it in any way, but it's about rising the education quality. Creating safe spaces for people to be like, wow, like, I have had fantasies or thoughts come through my head about little children, teenage girls or whatever, and that they're not going to be like witch hunted and shamed and all of that because they're revealing these parts. So on that level, I think it's really, really important, and it's certainly something that I've explored. I've journeyed my own like little kinky fetishes that were really taboo, played them out in scenes, and what I've experienced generally is that I'm like being a little girl that's being molested. Like, that's one that I've played out, and what I realized was that it diffused the charge. The thing that like pedestaled it or made it really like, and it diffused it, and then I just felt myself come into more wholeness and love around that piece, and not feel so like polarized by it, I guess. So like, I'm not going to repeat what you guys have said, but I agree wholeheartedly that there needs to be more conscious porn and stuff. But I think everyone's different. Like, I get off more on that. There's like a beautiful film clip of like the first orgasm on screen, and it's like and it's a black and white film, and it's just this woman like having this like quiet orgasm. I'm like, I love that. Like, it was like more exciting to me than the pornos that were being showcased at the same festival. So we're all different.
So you touched on something really important there that I'd like to see how far we can go down that portal, is you embodying certain experiences that are taboo to actually flatten that button. And from the few people that I talk about porn with, like in their relationships with it, it can sometimes become this like, someone starts watching mild hetero missionary porn, and then they just, all right, the next thing maybe like biracial porn, and then this, and like whatever's the new edge for them. All right, lesbian porn, like double penetration, whatever it is, and it keeps going until someone watches a woman get fucked by a horse or something like that, where it's just like, what is this new thing that can push my edge? But also there's certain parts of people looking at things because they want to either explore that in their own life, whether that's like some kind of BDSM. They're like, fuck, I want to do that, so I at least got to look at it. That's a big thing around porn when we're young. It's like, fuck, I got to watch porn because I don't know how to have fucking sex. And then there's these new things, or there's people that have, in my experience of talking to others, have experienced watching rape scenes or something like that because they either have a rapey energy about themselves, or they've been raped before and they want to like make it less taboo by seeing someone else do it. But it's in this shadow that we've talked about. It's the collective shadow of porn. And I've had experiences like yourself, you've said, like exploring that little girl of yours that's been molested or whatever. And I've been on the other side of that. Like I've been with a woman that's like, I need to explore that. Can you be the actual molester for me? And, you know, going into that with some kind of shamanic role-playing kind of experience. I want to talk about that a little bit more around flattening these buttons and pushing, not pushing people, like encouraging people to get in their bodies and experience these certain situations and the actual, like what that can do for our nervous system, and how there's such a pivotal, like either you're going to re-traumatize yourself or you're going to really blow through some charge, and how to actually facilitate that experience. If any of you do that, I'm curious to hear either your own personal journeys, if you want to share them, or how you are helping your own clients and students move through these certain really taboo experiences that they wouldn't want to tell anyone in a million years at this moment.
Yeah, I could speak to this.
Mm-hmm.
Something I'm very passionate about, what you're sharing. And I think, first of all, it's like what you just said, like that rabbit hole that people go down in pornography. It's like looking for the next edge, looking for the next stimulus. It's like, it's almost not the next edge. It's almost like sometimes, stimulus in general from life. And I'm talking like stress, like the enormity of pornography and how much of it there is.
Mm-hmm.
Just like life in general, I think numbs people out to being able to feel. And to being able to feel like the subtle sensations and minor contractions and expansions. There's also this, the culture that we live in kind of really idolizes the mind and like making decisions through the mind, and like, it's very mind driven, our society. And so often I feel like what's happening is that we're sort of often losing our truth of what actually resonates as truth inside of ourselves, because we're not connected to our bodies. And so a lot of the work around self-pleasure for me has been, how do you get people reconnected into finding and noticing what is truth in their body? So if I'm like, oh, do I want to do this with my partner? Is this a yes or a no? It's like, how do I find that truth? I don't need to go and watch pornography and find out what's normal. And I don't need to go and ask friends about what they're doing. Actually, there's a way of coming into my body and feeling, oh, does that feel like a yes or a no? And finding that yes or no inside of myself. And, for me, when I feel very excited or turned on by something, it's almost like I'll get goosebumps, or, my nipples will get hard. And it's like this experience of like, wow, this feels really enthralling and I want to be a part of this. And that's like my fuck yes state in my body. Mm-hmm. And then if there's a contraction, so it's exploring that contraction, going, oh, what's the fear there? Is that fear around my identity and what that will make me mean if I step into that experience with this person, or if I do this, or is that actually just like a no for me? And it's being able to feel the sensations in my body that get us there. And so with the self-pleasure modality, a lot of what it, with what you guys are sharing about, like, how do we work with that predatory nature that's maybe inside of us, or maybe the part of us that has an interest in kink. And part of the work of self-pleasure is using some of the work like Jungian theory with archetypes. And what I'll do then is, like, say if someone's having an experience of their sabotager, or their the part of them that crosses people's boundaries, or whatever the piece is that's coming up inside of them, it's like, can you actually start to get to know that part of your psyche and your self-pleasure with that part of your psyche? And there's like processes that I create where we can be with that part of our shadow and almost self-pleasure as that part of us. So it's like touching ourselves in that way. And I feel that it's the same as what Shaney says, it's able to release a lot of the energy that we have around it. It's almost like getting to know that part of us inside of ourselves allows for it to drop away. And this is one of the reasons I'm very passionate about self-pleasure, because I feel that there's so much of the sexuality work that we're trying to do is so potent, and this is like a massive part of it. And what's come up with a lot of people perhaps having their boundaries crossed is that it's very hard to tell where somebody is at on that journey of whether they're able to be with that. And so the work of self-pleasure I do is about witnessing people in their self-pleasure practice. So it's like, if I was to watch you, then be in your journey with your predator perhaps. And it's like, if trauma comes up or something comes up for you, it's like, I'm here and I'm a neutral party. And the neutral party that I hold is somebody that has seen so much and that has experienced a lot of all these different things. And just being able to just sit in that, which I think all of us do really well, is that we can be very open-minded. Because of everything we've seen, it creates such a safe space for that person in front of you to explore. And I feel that's a really powerful way that we can see a lot of this corruption around sexual energy come to a resolve inside of the individual, and then also in the collective as well.
Epic. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that what's really important here to flag is the sensitivity of the human. And if we're pushing ourselves into things too soon without having connected to that deep sensitivity that's alive and moving, then that's when we're kicking into just playing out habitual behaviors, looking for something that's going to give us that next hit, because that essentially connecting to the sensitivity is really about connecting to our innocence and our erotic innocence. And unless we come home to that place first, I don't think it's necessarily the best idea to be expanding too big, doing these things that perhaps are really taboo, or have trauma around. Doing your sensitivity work first is really key. I had an experience where I was in a domination house, spending time with dominatrixes, and I witnessed some really, really hardcore stuff there. And it was really like in plain sight how pushing ourselves into these harder zones of play can just be trying to fill the void or the emptiness of some deep wound, and it's never quite, it's not really bringing soothing to it. It's just bringing a hit of something. And I experienced witnessing this guy who was getting an anal fisting, like 2 hands, 2 feet, like it was like full on, and peeing in his butthole afterwards, and it was just like this full wild experience. And he was so disconnected from his eros, so disconnected from his heart, and I just looked at him and I just saw, it was like he was in an ordinary waking state. There was no transcending, when you're in a deep erotic experience, there's like a opening and transcending and expanding, and there wasn't any of that. And it was just in plain sight for me of like, wow, like he's just going further and further, trying to fill something that's living inside of him so deeply in the sensitivity, but he's accessing it through the kind of a way that isn't actually serving what he's truly yearning for. And it was damaging him, it was more and more physical damage over time. And I think that that's really common. So, my point being the sensitivity piece, doing your sensitivity work with your coaches or, mentors or therapists, and, connecting in with the stories and those parts are an important step to then be able to really expand into the play zone, which is really, really big. Play zone's huge. Yeah.
There's a very fine line there that because like I know I've put myself into experiences where I've gone to heal a certain area through the taboo and then gone too far and be like, fuck, I need to pull myself back and really slow down. And it takes work to, for anyone that's listening to this, really, we're talking about some deep stuff here. Only go as fast as the slowest part of you. Like, don't just throw yourself into these situations because this is deep work, right? Like, really be aware. It is, though it's sex and it's going into these different erotic archetypes and explorations, like use it as a meditation as well. Don't just throw yourself into this because it sounds fun and edgy and healing when it can easily tip over into re-traumatizing yourself.
Yeah, and the undoing of that can take longer than taking it slowly towards those spaces that seem exciting.
Another question I want to ask the three of you, a tie that I just was thinking about, is all of you working in sexuality work, all of you happen to be in long-term relationships and have been in, for majority of your career, been in relationships. I'm curious to know what that means for your work, like just some of the experiences that comes up. What are the pros and cons? Just anything that sort of, just because of I'm seeing the tie between the three of you, that you're all happen to be in deep, beautiful relationships, what that entails with being a sexuality leader.
I'll share. There's two things that I want to share here with regards to this. The first is like something that I've spoken about before, but there's but I've seen a few men working as sexuality healers or coaches or just working in the sexuality space who abuse their position as a sexuality teacher and end up abusing the women students that they have. And I'm sure we could list off a bunch of names in the sexuality community, but there's a cohort of men that have crossed boundaries and abused their position. And so like the piece around a relationship for me has, because I was very concerned about my how I was being perceived and the energy that I was giving off and how I was interacting with when I used to work with women. And even when I was doing workshops and everything, and when I was doing yoga classes, I was still mindful of like not doing adjustments and not really being reserved with my sexual energy and not, trying not to leak, I suppose. I was very much wearing a mask at the time. And so when I was first doing that, my, like when I owned this, my relationship was a cover. I've got a girlfriend, or I've got a significant other, or I've got a partner. You don't need to worry about a single sexuality teacher. I'm not going to hear I've got a partner. So that was very much my frame of reference, I suppose, when I really first started doing this work, probably about 6 years ago. And the way that's transitioned today is like a lot of the stuff that's come up in my relationship has been things that have triggered me when I've been working with, for example, seeing the way that the men that I'm working with have shown up in their relationships and women in their lives has been like, whoa, am I doing that in my relationship? Am I doing that in my life? And so now the relationship I have with my beautiful fiance and mother of my child feeds back the other way of like, okay, here's a model of a relationship. If you're, a lot of the men that I work with, they want monogamous relationships, or they are in a currently monogamous relationship, and so now I can reflect back to them like, hey, here's what a beautiful, openly communicated relationship kind of looks like, and I bring experience from that into the work that I'm doing now with the guys that I work with. So it transitioned from being like a bit of a cover for me working as a guy in the sexuality space to being like, no, I'm a guy working in the sexuality space, and I'm fucking okay with that. And I've also got, you know, this beautiful woman here who's doing some incredible work, and, you know, as a couple, here's the wisdom that we can bring through as well. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to share about their relationships and how that ties into the sexuality work?
I can go. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty, you know, yeah, I've been in relationships most of my career, different relationships. And I love relationship, you know, for the mirror that I receive. I love having a consort. Like I love having a partnership, and for my spiritual journey, it's deeply challenging. I'm even like currently experiencing an overlap. So my last relationship, you know, the wounding of my heart from that is, you know, I'm in a new relationship, and, you know, the journey of that, of like cracking that part open, and on my personal, that it's been a really big experience and continues to be. It's a lot there for me. But, you know, I really loved what you kind of highlighted there, Cam, around this, like men in this world being, you know, single men, and the ego play actually is how I interpret it. I don't know if that was your intention, but the ego play of, you know, the sexual power that comes, and being, you know, because they're taking a position of power and have all this wisdom, and women flock to it as like initiates almost, and that really can feed the male ego. And I see this through the tantric lens around, you know, the dakini was there to serve and dissolve the ego of the disciple, the male ego. And that was his path of spiritual awakening, was to keep dissolving and keep dying to her. And so that's like a philosophy that I really hold in how I relate, and vice versa. Like, it's my dissolving of my ego is certainly something that I'm continuously confronting in the nature of relationship.
It's fascinating. You both bring up the male like sexuality influence that can take advantage of that power. That's something like I've definitely journeyed to an extent. Like showing up on social media, being quite like sexually open and creating influence is back when we were COVID-free society. We could go to certain events in like around sexuality, people that were quite open. And I had this knowing within me, at least my perceived knowing, that's like, I could go to this event here or here or here or wherever, and I know I will, because I have a decent social media platform and I'm quite an open being and I consider myself attractive, is like that's going to be received by the women in these containers. Like, I'm going to go there and I'm going to have attraction towards me. I already have this already, like before I even know who this said woman is, there's majority of the times they know who I am, you know? And that was a bit of a like having to stay conscious with like not taking advantage of it, but also playing into that privilege. Like, yeah, I'm gonna own it. Like, yeah, I'm me, and hi, I'm gonna really show up as that person. A fascinating thing I'm journeying now is like now that I'm a bit more on the gay side, it's like, fuck, I've lost that whole entire privilege now. No fucking men at these events care about about me in that way. But it's something I've journeyed for sure, is like really having to stay integral around that, like sexual liberation and influence at the same time. Yeah. What's your journey there, Vic?
I was just feeling that it's like there's this, you know, like I actually had a call the other week with a woman, and, you know, she was, upset about something and talking about, you know, how I share, you know, it was almost like for me needing to take responsibility for things that my partner does, you know, and not even, it's almost like because of showing up as a brand of sexuality, it's like, how much responsibility do I take for in other people's opinions? You know what I mean? And not just, you know, my beloved, but also like, you know, students and all these different things. There's a lot of responsibility that goes on top of having a sexuality brand of what it needs to appear as, and the layers of responsibility that are inside of that, you know. So I've definitely felt that inside of being in a relationship, and being okay when I have different opinions to people that I'm, you know, in connection with. And then on top of that, I've also had the experience where, you know, my partner's been heavily projected on because he's a man that's speaking about sexuality. And, you know, just really, and actually personally experiencing the pain of that, even in my body, because I'm so deeply connected to him. Yeah, and just so deeply, like, the feeling of this work and just like really needing men to come on stage and speak about this stuff. And feeling this like pain, and like it can't just be us women coming here sharing this narrative, you know. It's just like, that's not going to work. And there's a lot of pain in my heart around that. And on the flip side of that, underneath all that responsibility and this need to be a leader when when it hurts sometimes, is like this space to be in this relationship where you can be really innocent and like laugh and just be in the ridiculousness. Like, I so need that in this position that I feel that I'm in this lifetime. Like, I just don't know. Yeah, it would be really challenging for me. And I know like the times when I have spent more time alone has been really challenging, because I haven't had that deep space of like the tenderness of myself being met, you know. And again, what you just said, Reese, is like being in these spaces is like, I've had my own experience of that. It's like people have an expectation of me being a certain way or being a certain part of myself because they see a certain part of me that shows up. And I feel that, you know, this kind of stems out towards men and women, you know. People expect me to be sexual in a certain way. People expect me to be, you know, people have ideas about how I relate and what I do. And it's just really made me feel even more private, I think, over the years about my relationships. And it's almost like that is a space for me to have my innocence and to have my tenderness. And I really value that more and more the more I work in this field. So that's what I feel to share.
Yeah, that's another fascinating one around sexuality, is like the having to hold the anchor of integrity within yourself in a manner of like, even when you're not online, is like, I'm curious about the times that you do just have a fucking wank, or you do just have like like a quick fucking coming session with your partner, or whatever it is that you do that's like not what you preach, you know, or what you teach. And having to hold that and like moving yourself through that, and the forgiveness and a dogma that you may place on yourself as a teacher. I'm wondering how all of you hold yourself through that in the times that you're not practicing what you teach.
I don't know if I have that experience, you know, like I feel like I teach like full acceptance of however your sexuality shows up and however your relationship shows up. And, you know, if I was having like a massive Barney with my partner or something, I'm like, that's all of it. That's it too, you know, like that's my experience of like relationships. It's like, it's all so important and so much a part of it. So I just like, yeah, I don't really have that piece play out for me, because I just love all of it. Like I just want to be so in, like I just want to drink all that sex and relationship has to offer. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. You know, it's like, how much can we keep drinking that? Just feels so delicious.
Cool. Fuck yes. I'm a fuck yes to that.
Yeah, I feel that it's like, for me, I try as much as I can and that I'm available for, to be as transparent as possible, because relationships are messy as fuck, like they're wild rides.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, I've experienced a lot of projection, like, you know, the sex witch, or the, you know, all the stuff of like I'm supposed to be a certain way, and I resonate with like going into spaces, sexuality spaces, and often I've found that I'm the most sensitive and reserved person in the space, because I'm just the more I journey the stuff, the more sensitive I get, the more I can't override parts that are of my girl, and parts that are, as soon as I feel like a projection or an agenda on me, I'm like, I shut down. Like it's just, I'm like, wow, I really feel fucked up here. Like I'm like, you know, but you know, it comes with the territory. And I just think as a leader, we've got to collapse this this thing of like the leader being a certain way, and all the projections and all that, like it's just doesn't serve. It's like the guru thing, you know, and now we see very clearly how corrupt that is when everyone's projecting the divine perfection onto this fucking human being that has, you know, shadows and is not perfect. And that's a part of the journey here on earth, is to recognize we're imperfect, and to ride the journey of imperfection with grace. Otherwise we'd still be spirits, like, and you know, like we'd still be out. Like what's the point of being here on the earth? Mass density.
Yeah. I feel like the most socially awkward person in most spaces, like a lot of the time, because I feel so shy and reserved because of that, you know, the projections. It feels so, I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the sexuality leader today, I just want to be me. You know, it's a lot.
Yeah, something that I just the thought that sparked after you asked that question was like dogma around ejaculation retention, for example, and I see a lot of like teachers going, you should only ejaculate this many times, or you know, you need to only, you know, masturbate this way, or you can never watch porn, and so there's all these limitations placed on like how you express your sexuality, and so something that I really try and do in my work is not be dogmatic, is like invite all of that into your expression of sexuality, kind of similar to what you were saying, Victoria, is like it's all part of your sexuality, you know, whether it's like a quick wank, or whether it's a, you know, 2-hour long you know, anal play session, whatever it is, right? It's all part of your sexual expression. And so I try and be as transparent as possible with the guys that I'm working with, and just say, look, in an ideal world, my personal practice would be to use the ejaculation, for example, would be to ejaculate like once a month on the full moon, and you know, be outside in a ritualistic setting, and you know, that would be my ideal personal practice. And when I get to do that, it's amazing, and I love it, and it's fantastic. But I don't have the luxury of being able to do that once a month every, you know, for the whole year. So there's times when I won't do that, and there's times when, you know, it looks completely different, and there's times when I just have a quick wank because I kind of feel that tension in my body and I want a quick release. So I try and be as open and transparent as possible with my own, again, I kind of use my own personal life and my own lived experience to inform the work that I do. But yeah, I just try and welcome as much of that into your sexual expression as possible, and then just find like what feels good for you. If what you just didn't really feel that good for you, it's like amazing, you learned something new, you learned what doesn't feel good for you now. Do you want to keep on going down that path, or do you want to try and change? Here's some other alternatives of ways you can express your sexuality here. Let's use that feedback that you've got from that thing that you did, which didn't really feel that great, and you felt a bit kind of like disappointed in yourself about it. No worries. Let's shift gears, and let's turn our attention towards something that we can learn from that experience.
Yeah, beautiful. Something I'm hearing again, like throughout that is like the dogma and the projections, right? And I know throughout my journey, especially when I first started talking about sexuality more and more, those projections that happen, and one way that manifested was, especially on Instagram and Facebook, people expecting me to want to have sex with them, or to interact with them in certain ways, or getting unconsensual dick pics and pussy pics and just any kind of nudity. And like, I've been quite open about it. I don't really mind. I actually enjoy looking. I'm like, oh, great, cool. Like I'll check you out. And then, but eventually, like, I made it very clear in a few posts and stories every once in a while. I'm like, if you want to, like, if you actually have someone, like no one to share this with, and you want to share it with someone, share it with me. Just tell me your intention with it. Cause that's usually my thing. Hey, well, thank you. I just want to check in what your intention is first, and maybe next time ask first beforehand. I'm curious to hear how you're dealing with it, where it's like, is it a strong boundary, or is it met with compassion? Are you like, hey, fuck off, that's not cool? Or is it like, hey, like, you know, are you okay? Does this rah, like where you sit with that? Because of a lot of it we're teaching is like, we're teaching boundaries and we're teaching acceptance. So there's a bit of like, how do you deal with those situations if that happens to you at all?
I get a lot of dick pics. I think Shaney and I both probably do.
Hey.
No? Oh, you're missing out.
I had maybe like a handful. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, like, I've only probably had like 2 from women, which is, you know, surprising. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have, like, that inbox is just madness, you know. It's not just you know, I wish it was more nudes and more, you know, fun things. It's really just random. Like most of the conversations that drop into my inbox, I'm just like, for me, it's the equivalent. Like, I don't get that offended by genitals or nudity or anything like that. Like, it's just not, for me, it's like the same as receiving a hello. It's like, there's just a lot going on in my inbox most of the time, and I just feel like it's all the same piece. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I you know, bring on any kind of new staff member who's not done a lot of work on sexuality, and I'm like, oh, can you just go in my inbox and do this? Like, watch out, there might be something in there. You know? Yeah, so like that's the, you know, the only piece there. But I don't think I have compassion, and you know, I can imagine what might be going on in someone's body when they send that nude. It might be like, oh, I want to send this, but I don't know if it's, you know, right. And maybe they don't even know why they're sending it, because it's just like an impulse and an urge, you know. And that's something that we talk about in the sexuality space. It's like, what happens when you run your sexuality more vertically than horizontally? You know, and I feel like that nude is just like another expression of people not knowing what to do with all this energy in here. So it's just going outwards, you know. So, I mean, that's just like a spectrum across the board, really, isn't it? It's like it starts there at like these unconsensual nudities, and then it just, you know, gets more and more extreme. And like, you know, that's just, you know, what we're working with. And I think if we're a safe space for that, then it probably is going to come this way.
Yeah, like, for instance, like, I would post a picture of me and friends, and my friend would get a dick pic from someone who was in my friends list. Like, it was like they wouldn't send it to me. So maybe they're scared, I don't know. But one that I did get that was a fascinating one was this guy who had the most, like, the strongest like, I was like, wow, like, and he was like, but he was like, can I send you these and show you what I can do? And he was getting off on it as well, and it was amazing. But you know, this, yeah, I'm with you, Cam, on the dogma and the rules, and it's meant to be this way. And, you know, looping around to what Vic was saying at the beginning around, like, this journey of awakening to your sexuality, or, you know, raising your kundalini, or whatever, refining it, becoming conscious, is really, it's such a unique journey, like as unique as your fingerprints. And that you know, being supported by people that can support you to find your way, that what works for your psyche and your body and what's happened for you in your life is so important, and dissolves the dogmatic, you know, it's meant to be this way and that way. You know, it's like following a recipe. It's like, try it and follow the recipe, but then you become like a master chef, and you just like have your own ingredients, and you do it you know, you just like intuitively work with it. And I think that those kind of teachings are there for that. Like, it's the original recipe, and then transcend it, move beyond it.
Yeah, sometimes you use an amazing tomato salsa. Other times you just use Master Foods tomato sauce. You know, it's okay.
I feel a bit like the odd one out because I've never received a dick pic. I've never received a clip pic. Like no one's ever sent me. No one from the public has ever sent me any nudes. So I feel like I'm missing out. What am I doing wrong?
Send you one after camp.
Yeah, we'll send you a collection.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, but something that I do get a lot of messages, and I'm sure we all do, is I just get people like dump their problems in my inbox. Like we'll not even the hello, not even hey Cam, how are ya? Like not even as like, is it okay to share? Like not even like, hi, this is my name. It's just like a boom, straight into me and my husband are doing this, or me and my wife have got this problem, and now and it's been 25 years, and I'm like, whoa, that's a lot to from a stranger, from a person who ostensibly doesn't even know who I am as well. And I could be, I could just be a random person on the internet and just be kind of fluffing all this up and just be a stranger. But and that used to like really upset me, because I used to be like, fuck, these people aren't even asking me. These, like, where's the consent? Where's the no one's checking in? And it used to really like make me feel quite jaded. And then I sat with it and reflected on it, and I was like, and then it made me feel like really upset, not in the way I was just describing, but in kind of a different way, because I was like, oh my God, these poor people don't have anyone else to share this with. They don't know who to talk to. They don't have someone in their life that they can actually tell this information to. So they're resorting to telling a stranger on the internet, someone who they think might be able to, because maybe I'm their only option or their last resort or whatever it might be. So it just made me kind of feel like really humbled, firstly, that they felt comfortable sharing that with me, but then also like really just really upset that these people maybe don't have someone in their lives that they can actually have this type of conversation with. So they've got to send it via a Facebook message or an Instagram message to someone that they don't even really know. So that's what I do get a lot of that in my inboxes, people just sharing some really intimate information without warning.
How are you dealing with it? Like, are you responding?
I used to respond. I used to like really invest in it. And the more I've been in this space, the more I'm like, firstly, a message via Instagram that I'm sending to them is not doing them service. Like I can't coach them. I can't really offer them much advice. I can kind of just say, and so that's what I used to do. I used to like send really lengthy messages. And I'm like, this is going to be interpreted wrong, or I'm not going to be clear. I really like to speak and sit down and write and get like really concise in what I'm trying to say. And I just felt like I wasn't able to do that. So I got to the point where I stopped. There was a period of time where I just kind of didn't reply. I just kind of let it, be seen in the inbox. And I was like, fuck, I'm just not going to reply to this. And now I've kind of reflected on it again. And what I usually do is I say, hey, thank you so much for feeling comfortable to share. I've just got to kind of copy and paste reply. I say, thanks for feeling comfortable enough to share with me. If you want to seek some advice, I don't really offer any advice via Instagram Messenger, so please book in a call. I offer free 60-minute discovery calls. Book in a call with me. Let's sit down. Let's have a chat. And that usually weeds out the people that are just looking for a quick piece of advice and just want some free information or some free advice, and they typically won't book in a call. And then I get the other group of people that are like, thank you so much for applying. Going to book in a call with you. I just really needed someone to talk to. So that's where I've gotten to the point now. It's just a copy paste reply of saying, hey, thanks for sharing. Yeah. Really value that you're able to share that with me. Just want to offer you this space so I can really show up for you in a one-on-one space rather than just texting or being online.
Yeah, wonderful. That's what I have. I have certain, I don't know on your phones, but on my Samsung, in my copy and paste, I have a clipboard of like things that I can lock into my copy and paste. So I just have certain things for certain things. People message me that I just like, I can't reply to this, and just paste. Yeah, that's great. Cool. Shaney's going twee. I'm feeling to slowly start wrapping this up anyways, because Vic's got a meeting. So I'm curious to hear between you two, for anyone that is listening that is moving into the sexuality field, becoming a coach, becoming a leader, that is a student at this current time and wants to continue to grow more influence and pick up a better game with their programs and their clients, what is some advice you feel to share that you know, again, like the 10 years ago version of your self-care, maybe the 2 years ago, the 3 years ago, same with you, Vic, that you wish you had known at the start of your coaching journey?
A piece for me would be, I think this is actually what I'm wanting to create, is like, where can we all fit into this big picture, you know? And I think that there's sometimes it can, for me, when I first came in, I was like, oh, this feels really like I either have to be a sex coach, or, you know, and maybe a healing massage therapist or something, you know. Those were sort of like the two options that I could see that were available to me. And I think that the invitation I would have to my younger self would be like, just to keep exploring and to keep feeling into what's possible and what you want to share and what's really truly on your heart, and sharing from that space rather than the ideas of having to fit into any particular role inside of the sexuality development space.
Epic.
My advice, I guess this is advice, but it's I guess it's also something that I hold as a value to my own. So this is biased. I'll say that. I'll preface it by saying this is biased. is get educated. Like, if you want to step into a sexuality coaching role or a sex therapy role or any type of work in the industry, like, do the work beforehand. Don't just read a fucking book, or don't just go to a workshop and now just anoint yourself qualified to work in the space. Again, that's my biased opinion. I think we should be all, you know, informed and educated and you know, qualified to do this work. And I, you know, I speak about pushing for accreditation and qualifications and things like that in this space. But that's something that I really value. And so if that would be my advice for people going into this work, is to, you know, make sure you've done the work to be able to step into you know, a role like this.
Thanks, Cam. Shaney, I don't know if you heard the start of or picked up what the basis of this question is, but essentially, what would you give as advice to either the version of yourself that was at the beginning of the journey that you wish you knew back then, or to someone that is coming onto this journey themselves, that are desiring to be a coach and starting to facilitate people through experiences that they're desiring?
Take it slow. There's no rush. Yeah. Like, for me, I was violated by one of my first teachers, and I didn't know any different. Like, I didn't know. And you know, I came into this world when there wasn't a lot of information. There wasn't a lot of people doing it. So, you know, I really was like excited, and I was like, give me everything, you know, like, you know, yeah. And yeah, it would just be, take it slow, you know, look for teachers, be guided, seek support, don't do it alone. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And again, the same question, but for people that are just starting their sexuality journey themselves, like that are just looking, they feel like their sexuality is repressed, that they don't know where to start. They're either looking to work with someone or just even something they can do in private, whether that's books or practices, or people to follow on their YouTube channels. What is some advice you'd give to someone that's listening and going, oh, fuck, they've just unpacked a lot and I don't know if I'm ready. Where's the first step I can go? Also welcome to plug your own businesses in this moment.
That was actually what I was feeling. I was like, is this the time? Yeah, it's something that I've been really in the inquiry of, actually, inside of my own work, and created a bit of a like a quiz where people can go through, and it's like I'm calling it like the transformation through touch journey. And there's like three very distinct parts of it, and they're not like levels like you go up into the next level. It's more like a circular experience that I've gone through many a times on my journey, and it looks like clearing through the past. So for me, it's an always ever present unfolding for me of like letting go of like past conditioning and you know, are the traumas that keep arising for me that maybe come and go throughout my life, throughout different experiences. So yeah, there's like a clearing through the past phase that I start to journey with sometimes, and then there's other place which is connecting to the present. For me, that's about becoming more embodied, starting to do more of that journey around the self-pleasure part, and then there's like creating the future. So it's like, what can you do with that sexual energy? How does that sexual energy move from being, you know, an erotic current in the body to then being able to create and move through blocks around money and around, you know, having the relationships you want, and all those pieces. So yeah, I've created a bit of a quiz to see where people may be at on their journeys in this moment. And yeah, just so, and I have like underneath each of those banners like some free courses, free videos, some just like places and things that they can read to understand a bit about where they're at on their journey of sexuality development in this moment. So yeah, I'd love to drop you the link for that.
Awesome. So Vic has the full artillery if you're needing to start your journey. You don't need to go anywhere else but to Victoria.
That's not true. We don't say that.
No, but seriously, that's so great. That like what I'm trying to say in a very sarcastic way is like that. Obviously, you're not just doing high end people that are all the way at the end of their journey, or like that's super sexually liberated. Is that there's free stuff all the way up to, I'm sure you have high end stuff, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and really something I'm passionate about is like people really going in and finding what they want to work with, you know, what's alive for them in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just want to say that I think it's really important for people to find the mentors that offer them the piece that's alive for them in that moment too.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you, Vic.
Something that is important, at least if you're new to this work and like not sure where to go, is to find a community, like find a group of people that are also on the journey, that are also wanting to explore more. And there's heaps of communities out there, obviously, like you've got to kind of find them, but you know, reach out to people like us, reach out to someone who's kind of in the space already, and we'll, you know, if we're good at what we do, we'll refer you on to a community of people that, you know, are aligned to what it is that you're looking for, or we'll welcome you into our community. Or, you know, there's lots of support out there. It's just about like reaching out to someone in the space and hopefully getting a straight answer from them and saying, you know, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Would you be able to point me in the right direction? And hopefully, you know, that person can point you in the right direction. But that would be my like overarching thing, is like find community, find some people that are doing the same thing and connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any off the top of your head that you would know, some like sex positive communities that people can join on, say, Facebook, Instagram, websites, events that may be local to you or anything like that?
These are all like predominantly for men, because that's who I refer to. So there's the Conscious Locker Room, which is on Facebook, which is run by a good friend of mine here in WA. There's also the Present Father Project, which is coming up as well. There is my own group, which is Outperform a Porn Star, which is a group of dudes who are going down this journey of sexuality. So there's a few spaces out there, but you know, like I said, reach out to someone and we'll give you the information.
Yeah, awesome. Conscious Locker Room. I love that name. And I'm pretty sure, to my understanding, anyone that wants to go do Outperform a Porn Star, possibly I have a little segment in there. Is that right?
You certainly do, man. On ritualizing our sexual experiences.
Yeah, great. I didn't know it was going to be a reoccurring thing, and I saw the thing go up. I'm like, oh, sick! I'm just constantly teaching people that I have no clue. That's great. Awesome. So do that. And Shaney.
Well, I have a free Facebook group, Essential Summoning, where there's some pieces in there around dance and the fundamentals of dance, like erotic dance in particular. I'm a really big fan of nervous system restoration, and I think that erotic dance is, when it's for self, is a really incredible ritual journey to give yourself permission to explore before you even, you know, touch your genitals. Sometimes it's just like learning how to unwind the system, unwind the nervous system, and be more anchored and present and conscious in the different parts of your body. If it's the subtleties of the sensation in the hips. And I think that that's where like true deep pleasure comes from, is our ability to really land ourselves in our body, in the cells of us, and really feel the depths of which we can feel. So for me, erotic dance, sensual dance has been a huge piece for me there. So I know it's not for everyone, but yeah.
Is it, but at the same time, is it for everyone or is it for women only?
This one's for women only, but I recommend men doing it as well. I hope one day I can have a space. We'll see.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, I'll actually come join that one, but
yeah, I've had quite a few men say that. Yeah, I'm still working on the business pieces, and I'm a slow in that sense. So, but yeah, if you're a man or non-gendered, binary, whatever, like this is a practice for everybody to explore your erotic dance. I've been following some amazing Instagram accounts where these men are like dressing in lingerie and dancing and like really connecting with the family. Yes, like
yeah, that's a big part of my practice, is just erotic dance. But I'd love to like see what a container of other people are up to. But I'm sure you'll reach out to me when that happens. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. For anyone that's listening, in the descriptions of this, I'll have the Instagrams, websites, everything that you need to connect with Cam, Shaney, and Vic. I think that's all I really got. If anyone else has anything else they want to say before we close up, but if not, we'll wrap up. Does anyone have anything?
Just thank you, man. Thanks for having this conversation. Thanks for using your platform.
Thank you.
You're great at this. Great at leading
the
conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll keep all this recorded. I won't stop. Yeah, give me props so everyone else can hear it. What have you got, Vic? Tell them how great I am.
I do actually think it's really interesting, that you've got your piece in Cam's course, you named my course, it's like you're so in it, like there's this, it's beautiful watching you weave your magic into these spaces, and I'm always grateful for that. And I'm grateful to be, almost on a panel. Like Shane and I have been aware of each other for ages, and we've never had a proper conversation. This feels really beautiful that I get to meet her.
Oh, fuck yeah.
As well. So like, it's really exciting for me,
Fuck yeah.
I really enjoyed connecting with all of you together. It's like we get to hang out. When does that ever get to happen? So much learning inside of that.
That's my like biggest goal. I assumed you two knew each other, and that's just like I just want to connect with people and see what happens from that. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the trifecta of this is me and Shaney will start the erotic dance for male-bodied people.
There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called
Curious. Nowadays, there are still